Okay, so this for today, I'm going to talk about the different types of unemployment. And to understand what the significance is between the different types of unemployment, I want to begin by talking about what the basic problems are with unemployment. So remember the production possibilities frontier that we had at the beginning of the course. And this AOG that I have on this graph, that's all other goods. And I'm just going to put good A on the horizontal axis. But the PPF represents all of the maximum combinations of output that could be produced if a country was using all of its resources at a given time and with a given technology. So if this is our nation's production possibilities frontier, then what we're going to be able to say about this is that if a nation is operating along the line of their PPF, just somewhere along the curve of their PPF, we can say that they're using all of their resources, because, which means there aren't resources that are unemployed. So any time they're on the PPF, doesn't matter where they are, because they're using their maximum, they're getting the maximum production that they can from their resources, they must be using them all. So all the combinations on the PPF would represent full employment, okay? Now, any time that the country is operating inside its PPF, we know that there must be some resources that are not being fully utilized. And so we say, yes, there is unemployment, okay? Now, it's the I want to make a distinction right now in that let's say a country is operating on its production possibilities frontier. Is it possible that they can have unemployment? And yes, it is possible to have unemployment if a country is operating on its PPF. And in fact, most times we have, generally in the real world, we never have absolutely every resource employed completely. There's going to be some resource that is moving around, and it's between employment. But what we mean when a nation is on its production possibilities frontier is, hi Ronnie, is that a country would be actually producing enough activity, there's enough business activity, there are enough jobs in existence to employ everybody who wants a job. So when we're on our PPF, that does not mean everybody's employed, but it does mean there's enough business activity, there are enough jobs to employ everyone who wants to work, okay? The unemployment that we're concerned about, however, is the unemployment that exists when we're inside our production possibilities frontier. Now, that type of unemployment, okay, the main concern then is for the unemployment that exists when we are inside the PPF, okay? Because when we're inside our PPF, it means that the entire economy is not creating enough jobs to employ everybody. And that's the part where when we have that kind of condition, we're in a recession, or even worse, a really deep recession, which can sometimes be referred to as a depression, although it's not an official term, depression. Our last Great Recession in 2008 into 2009 was pretty serious. We had double-digit unemployment, and especially in the state of California. And so we were really deep inside our PPF, and that had some serious consequences. When we're inside our PPF, we do, of course, have unemployment of other resources besides labor. We have unemployment of, say, for instance, physical capital. For instance, during the Great Depression of the 1930s, we had a significant amount of what is called excess capacity. And that means that we were inside our factories. We could have been running them round the clock. We weren't. They weren't even full of workers. They weren't running the whole factory all at the same time. So there was a lot of potential for more production from those factories, but we weren't utilizing it. So unemployment actually can refer to unemployment of land as well. For instance, farmers might not be able to plant all the crops that they would normally do it because they wouldn't have a market to sell it in. So we have a considerable amount of potential for unemployment besides just the unemployment of labor. However, the focus that we are having here is on the unemployment of labor. So we're mainly concerned about the unemployment of labor in this context. And so every time that we use the term unemployment, we're referring to the unemployment of labor, even though those other types of unemployment are just as important. Okay, so what are the problems with unemployment that occur when we're inside our PPF? When a nation is inside its PPF. Well, of course we know that we're not getting as much production as we can. So that's one problem. It's a loss of production. Since we're inside our PPF, it means we are losing production. Now, I know a number of people who have garages so full of stuff, that they can't even put their cars in the garage. And so sometimes when we think about, losing production, we say, well, really, we have a lot of stuff, why do we need more stuff? We certainly don't need all that production, do we? But there is a consequence to not having that production. During this last Great Recession, the state of California was not taking in as much tax revenue because there wasn't as much production taking place, and so their incomes were lower, and therefore less tax revenue went into the state. As a consequence, the state ended up having lots of big holes in their budget, billions of dollars worth of shortfalls in their budget. They couldn't, they needed to try to close the gap. In a state budget, it's like really important for a state to be able to maintain a balanced budget. So Governor Jerry Brown tried to close the gap by doing such things is he wanted to kind of split it up between collecting more taxes and decreasing spending. So half of it he wanted to do spending and half of it he wanted to do taxes. But because of the way taxes have to be approved in the state, most of it was coming from decreases in spending. And because he wasn't able to get much in the way of results in increasing taxes from the legislature. So we saw huge cuts in the monies going to post-secondary education, to the CCCs, the Cal States, and the UCs. All of them saw huge budget cuts. Many students were finding that they weren't able to get the classes they needed to graduate in Cal States and the UCs. Some students found that they could no longer afford to go to the UCs because the UCs ended up having to raise their tuition fees to cover the cuts in funding from the state. I had students that were coming from the UCs and the Cal States because they had no place to pick up some of these classes, and they couldn't afford to go to the UC. So, but then when they were trying to go to the California community, the CCCs, the colleges, the community colleges, they found that even there the budget cuts were significant. And in fact, in the summertime, some of the colleges just cut all of their classes practically, or most of them, and only a very handful even offered any significant number of classes. And so it got really tough for students. By the time that Proposition 30 was on the ballot in 2012, students were looking at the potential. First off, they wouldn't be able to transfer for a winter session at the UCs, or for the spring for the Cal States. Many of them weren't even taking any transfers for those this partway through the year. And they were cutting back on the number of students that they were taking as freshmen. And the graduate programs were basically being shut down because they couldn't afford to have any graduate programs. Needless to say, not only were students having a hard time even getting courses, they were also having a hard time getting jobs. It's like all the doors were being slammed in the students' faces. I was finding it very exasperating and sad. I really had a hard time with this. But this cutback in the production, this loss of production, has consequences for people. There's just simply not as much to go around, and we have to figure out where it's going to be cut. So this loss of production sometimes can even set the economy back for years to come. In fact, we had loss of production in many different sectors of the economy, and it's going to take us a long time to recover because our economy wasn't growing. And if you paid attention to the economic growth issues, you realize that every time we don't get economic growth, that sets us back on a compounding factors. It compounds over the years. So anyways, yeah, the California economy took a major hit with the recession. Second problem, which is probably more obvious, is a loss of income for households. Now, this loss of income for these households, some of these people ended up losing their homes as well because they could no longer afford the mortgage, and so there was a huge problem with the loss of income. The other thing is loss of self-esteem. This is one of the other, when people are productive, they feel better about themselves. And so when somebody becomes unemployed, they don't really think they're in control of their lives. They feel like that they don't have, they're not worthy of certain things because they can't support themselves. They can't bring in an income. And it was particularly challenging for a lot of young people because a lot of young people ended up having to move back with their parents because, I'm 28 years old and I'm not even being able to support myself, and mom and dad have to take care of me. And a lot of them were feeling uncomfortable with that. There was a study that a student showed me that was done in England. And what the study said is that young people who experience significant amounts, a cohort of young people, a generation, group of young people who entered the labor market at a time when there weren't very many jobs, and experienced significant unemployment at that point in their lives, it would take them 20 years before their careers were on par with their peers that had jobs at the same time. So that's, and a lot of that has to do with the self-esteem aspect of it. Lastly, we see increases in suicide. This is really when we have some significant downturns in the economy, we see a lot more suicide rates go up, and of course that's a significant problem. Okay, so we definitely don't want the kind of unemployment where we're inside our PPF. That's just out, okay? So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about how we can judge whether we're inside our PPF, what signifies whether we're inside our PPF. Because it's this type of unemployment, the unemployment that occurs when we're inside our PPF, that we're the most concerned about. We expect the other types of unemployment to exist no matter what the conditions are, sometimes more than others, and I'm going to talk about one type of unemployment that's becoming far more common and may be actually an issue as we go forward. So let's talk about the different types of unemployment, how we define them. It seems like, there we go. All right, so first off, let's talk about the types of unemployment. I'm going to categorize them. I'm going to just give you the the main types, and then we will talk about how they differ from each other, what the significance of them are. There's actually 4 types of unemployment, but I'm only going to talk about 3 of them because the other one is a type of unemployment that just kind of tends to skew the numbers and make it a little bit difficult to sort through, but it's not really significant in terms of our concerns on unemployment. So I'm not going to talk about it here. And that is the types of unemployment is seasonal unemployment. So I don't know why that ended up being there, but so let's talk about one of the first type I want to talk about, and it's called frictional unemployment. So frictional unemployment is probably the most common type of unemployment. And the cause of frictional unemployment, or actually what we mean by frictional unemployment, can best be expressed if I create a graph of the market for labor. And I'm going to have to change that. So let's talk about the market for labor. We're going to have a few different graphs of the market for labor, so I'm going to set them up now so that we get it all done at once. Okay, so if we have a graph of the labor market, the demand in the labor market is what is referred to is the employers. The employers are the ones who demand workers. Sometimes we don't think of it that way. We don't really think of it as the employers as being the ones that are demanding. We oftentimes think of them as the suppliers, but they actually are the ones who demand labor. So I'm going to just put that in there so that you remember that it is the employers. And then the supply curve represents the workers. Okay, just so that we keep it straight in our heads. Now, in the market for labor, and we're going to have to label it. I got to label it market for labor. Oops. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Because something went off in my ear and I didn't know. Okay, so in the market for labor, let's say it's springtime, May and June, and all these students are graduating from high school, they're graduating from college, and they're going out to the workforce to look for their entry job for their career. And so what happens is, since they've been in school up to that point, what we see is that the supply of workers increases right about that time. So the supply curve, when it increases, it shifts to the left. Excuse me, it shifts to the right. Right is more. My Kung Fu instructor says, no, the other right. I always forget that. Okay, so you ever confuse the two? So it shifts right. Now, what that leads to is this movement along the demand curve to the new equilibrium, because you know, it takes them a little while to find jobs, and so what happens is that the market is constantly, you know, is trying to adjust to a new equilibrium. right? And so as it's adjusting to that new equilibrium, during that time in which that supply curve is shifting down along the demand curve, we're seeing that time period over which workers are looking for their jobs and they're trying to find employment, and the employers are looking for workers. And they don't get the jobs right away, so it takes a while to get down to that new equilibrium point. And while they're going through this process, they're unemployed. So frictional unemployment is employment that is caused by the necessity of or caused by the time it takes to find workers and employers to find each other. Okay, and we can see it in the graph as this adjustment down along the demand curve. Adjustment to a new equilibrium. Well, since generally there's two parts of this frictional unemployment. Some arguments, for instance, are that it's great. It's actually no problem at all, because it implies that what we're going to have is we're going to have a more efficient labor market. We're going to have workers that are working at jobs that they are better suited for. And employers are going to find workers who can be more productive because they're happier with their jobs and things like this. However, there is a flip side to this, and that is that there are some people that feel that any type of unemployment, even if it's frictional unemployment, puts too much of a burden on the worker. The worker is not making any income during this period of time, and that's just not acceptable as far as they're concerned. And so they argue against frictional unemployment. However, in the United States, in our economy, we have kind of tend to favor allowing for frictional unemployment to exist. And that's just the way our policies work. You can do it either way. It just depends on your basic philosophy. There are pros and cons to both of it. But for most part, we're not too concerned about frictional unemployment.
There are several features you may want to use to manage your meeting. To get a quick count of the people in your meeting, press 1. For a roll call, press 2. To end your meeting, press 3. To lock your meeting, press 4. Once locked, press 4 again to unlock it. To mute all of the guests in your meeting, press 6. To unmute, press 7. To change your host security code, press 9. For additional information, press 0.
I don't know what happened. Can you hear me now?
You will now rejoin the meeting.
I just don't know what happened. All of a sudden I was pulled out and given some announcement about what I can do in the meeting. I don't know what happened. It just totally threw me off. Okay. So a second type of unemployment is the kind of unemployment that we get when we have, for instance, what is called structural unemployment. Okay, it's called structural. Okay, structural unemployment is, well, is caused by changes in the structure of the labor market. That's why we call it structure. For instance, we know that as time goes by that there are some things that were produced, like say for even 20 years ago, for instance, that we don't produce now. Like we don't really produce very many landline telephones, but we do now produce, for instance, cell phones. We also, didn't have any computers. When I was growing up, we had computers, but we didn't have them certainly in the numbers that we have them now. So there are changes in that, and there are changes in the demand for things. Some things we just, we like certain types of things. Our tastes change over time. And so some things fall in disfavor and other things more in favor. But then there's some other changes that happen that affect the labor market. For instance, changes in technology. And in fact, the advent of computer technology in the workplace has created huge amounts of transitions to new types of technology in the labor market. And this, of course, has caused some workers who used to do things that are now being handled through computers to lose their jobs. And of course, though, at the same time, we have people who are now offered jobs in areas that require the use of computers. We also have seen a lot of the effects of globalization, where we have jobs that used to be done here in the United States, and now they're being done in other parts of the world. And of course, there are jobs that used to be done in the other parts of the world that are now being done here in the United States. But anyways, what this does is it causes shifts in the labor market for the types of workers that we have. So I'm going to show you how it affects it in the market, the graph, what we're looking at here. So the structural unemployment is, some people consider it a net gain, but I'm kind of concerned about it. I think that it's getting to the point where it is causing a lot of disruption in the labor market and making things difficult for workers. Okay, so in the market for labor, now this is the labor in the market for auto workers. And maybe this is the labor market for engineers over here. So bear with me for a second because I have to shift this here a little bit so it's not in the way. Okay, so let's say that, this is not going on now, but a few years ago, there was significant problems in our auto industry. It didn't look like they were going to be able to, they were going to get weighed down by their obligations to retired people, their pensions and things of that sort. And there were other factors too. So let's say we go back to that point, and one of the things that the auto industry decides that they're going to do to deal with this problem is to put more robots on the assembly line. Well, if they do that, then the demand for workers is going to shift to the left, because the workers are, they're switching out robots for, switching out workers for robots. I don't know which way you want to call it, but at any rate, the robots are replacing the workers. So now, in the auto industry, what we have is we have fewer jobs for people who do work on the assembly line. Now, when they go out and look for new jobs, there is an overall loss of jobs in the area that they have skills in, because it's not like that there's more jobs in some other auto industry that they can go to. There may be, but when the auto industry goes through this kind of fluctuation and they cut back, that generally means there's fewer jobs overall. So that means that the only way that these workers are going to be able to get a job is they either have to take a job which they don't have the skills in and start over again, or maybe they can go back and retrain and find some other area that they could potentially work in. Or they could move. They could move someplace. Anyways, what happens is that these workers become unemployed, and it's very difficult for them to get back into the labor market. In fact, this is one of the most troubling kinds of unemployment for a lot of workers, because they don't, it takes a while to find new skills, to develop new skills. Some of them can't move because they have families and they have, they have homes that they have mortgages on. They can't adapt to this change in their job, and overall, it can be devastating. I had a student several years ago who lost a job at Pfizer. He had been doing research for Pfizer, and he's a biochemist. He had a master's degree in biochemistry. And Pfizer decided to offshore the type of work he was doing. Anyway, there wasn't any more jobs out there for him to get. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't get a job someplace else. And so he became what is called structurally unemployed. He had to figure out how he was going to retrain for something else completely. And so, like I said, this can be a very devastating kind of unemployment for the worker. So structural unemployment is, it's a real challenge. And one of the things is that structural unemployment is so devastating sometimes. And I think that because of these rapid changes that we're having in technology, that it is changing the labor market. It's a labor market's having to adjust, and it means workers are having to adapt and adjust rapidly. It's making it a challenge for workers to keep up, and we're leaving a lot of workers behind because of this. We've got to figure out a way to get these people back to work. We have to be able to help people adjust to the changes in the labor market, to plan for changes in the labor market, and to potentially make it so that, maybe some of these changes don't happen so quite so rapidly, so people have it, you know, a head start on it. They don't get caught without a job for a while. Now, that's not to, the thing with structural unemployment is that it does not mean that there aren't jobs in the labor market. It's just that it's not the labor market that they're working in that the jobs are at. It could be like, for instance, these auto workers might be losing their jobs. But now we might find that there are more jobs for our engineers, because now we need more engineers to be able to design and manage the robots, right? So so we might get an increase in the jobs over here for engineers. But of course, the people who had jobs on the assembly line are probably not going to be able to do them. That's the problem with that. Okay, so we still see plenty of jobs. It's just that they're not the same jobs. They're not the same kind. Okay, so structural unemployment is caused by unemployment caused by shifts in the labor market. Due to new technologies, outsourcing, changes in demand for some goods. Okay, and so this leaves workers who this causes workers to become unemployed who no longer have the skills that are in demand. Who possess skills that are no longer in demand. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up for in a second. So structural unemployment is a bit of a challenge, to say the least. Okay, so what about the last type of unemployment that we have? The last type of unemployment is what is called cyclical unemployment. And cyclical unemployment, as its name suggests, is it follows a cycle. And the cycle that it follows is the business cycle. Okay, so when we have a recession, for instance, and we're inside our production possibilities frontier, what we're going to see is that that people become unemployed, not because the businesses are shifting or changing to, their production to something else or to a different location. What we see is that the reason that people become unemployed is because the whole economy is slowing down. There's not as much business activity. And as a consequence, the number of jobs in the whole economy decreases. That's what causes the cyclical unemployment. So in cyclical unemployment, we see a shift of the demand curve again, in this case. So the demand curve is going to shift to the I made a mistake there, okay. So the demand curve is going to shift to the left, but it's for the whole economy that it's shifting to the left. It's not just one segment of the economy like the auto workers. It's for the whole economy that it shifts. And so it's kind of like a case of musical chairs. You have these workers all out there looking for a job, but there's just simply not enough jobs to go around. Plain and simple. And so there are going to be some people who are going to be left without a job. And this is the one that we have the most problems with because, one, it's the kind of unemployment where people, it's involuntary. People don't want to be unemployed. They didn't choose to be unemployed. And secondly, it isn't the kind of unemployment that actually has some benefit to it, like structural unemployment. If we had these people working at things that we just didn't want anymore, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of new technologies. So that's what justifies structural unemployment. We don't have that kind of justification for cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is totally involuntary, and it's inefficient. We're inside our PPF. That's the problem with it. And when we're inside our PPF, we have loss of production, loss of skills, and we have loss of income by individual households. And this is this is exactly the kind of unemployment that we want our government to target and to go after with stabilization policies. Sometimes this kind of unemployment can get sky high. For instance, when we had cyclical unemployment during the last Great Recession, we ended up with a number of people who couldn't pay their bills, a lot of these people, and they went out and looked for jobs, and they couldn't find any, especially in the construction industry. I knew a number of people in the construction industry. Some of them even went out of state to get jobs. They had to commute back and forth between Arizona and California because their families were still here. But the only jobs that they could get were in Arizona or farther up north in California, although Northern California wasn't doing that well either. But these, it was just really hard on people because there just weren't enough jobs to go around. And I knew numerous students who graduated or were trying to get jobs even before they graduated, and there was nothing out there. They were being used and abused. So anyway, cyclical unemployment is very problematic. Okay, so cyclical unemployment occurs when the economy is in a recession or a downturn or increases. When the economy is in a recession. And this type of unemployment is involuntary. It can cause a lot of hardship for the whole economy. It indicates that the economy is inside the PPF. Okay. So let's take a look at something. I want to show you something that I think you might find interesting. And it's a little table that I saw at one time. I'm gonna just let's say we have number of let's see, job vacancies. And then we have our number of unemployed. Okay, so we have two possible arrangements. We have a few different possibilities that can come out of this, okay? So let's take a look at what we're going to have. So let's say we have 10 job vacancies. There are three possible things that could be going on. We could have 9 people unemployed. In other words, we could actually have fewer people unemployed than there are jobs. Is that a problem? Well, this means that we have two types of unemployment taking place, right? Two types. We have, for instance, we can have frictional unemployment, because we'll always have frictional unemployment. And we could have structural unemployment, because even though these people are unemployed, that doesn't, there's probably some jobs elsewhere that employ people in other parts of the labor markets. Okay, so, but we don't have any cyclical unemployment in this condition. There's no cyclical. Okay, no cyclical. All right, so now I'm going to go to the bottom here. I'm going to say, okay, let's say we have a situation where we have 11 people unemployed. Well, now we can see that yes, we have so we still have frictional and structural unemployment, just like we did up above. But this time, because there's more people unemployed than there are job vacancies, that means we're inside our PPF. We have cyclical unemployment. The economy is not producing enough jobs to employ everybody that wants one. And so this is the problem situation. This is the one that we don't want to have happen. Okay, so we'll have cyclical. And so this is the one that we want to avoid. So our policymakers, what we want them to do, we don't feel that it's necessary for them to get unemployment down to below the number of job vacancies. But we do expect them to get it to at least where there's enough jobs, exactly enough jobs for everybody that wants a job. So we want them to get to this point here, where we have 10 jobs and 10 people who are unemployed. This is what is referred to as full employment. Okay, and this is full employment. When we have this. And so okay, so this is the goal of stabilization policy. We want to get all of that cyclical unemployment. We want to get rid of all of this cyclical unemployment. Okay, and so this is the goal, and the problem is how do we know when we're at that point? Question: how do we know when we have full employment? Okay, so the question is, how do we know we are at full employment? And the reason why we don't, because let's say we have a labor force. Let's say the labor force has 100 people in it. Okay, then at this full employment level, then at the full employment level depicted above, the unemployment rate will be equals 10, which is the number of unemployed, right? 10 divided by 100, which is the number in the labor force, times 100, or which is equal to 10%. Right? Because the way we calculate the unemployment rate is we take the number unemployed, we divide it by the labor force, multiply it by 100, and that equals 10%. The problem is that the labor market is constantly in fluctuation, right? And so we don't really know whether 10% is full employment. There's nothing to tell us whether this is full employment or not. It doesn't say whether there's enough jobs for everybody that wants one. Okay? And this is let me just point out an example. For instance, let's say somebody who's just graduating from high school goes to the manager down at McDonald's and says, hey, it's been great working here, but I'm off to find a real serious job. I want to go out on my own. So he leaves his job at McDonald's. McDonald's hasn't fired him. They still need a worker there. So they have, what, one more job vacancy. We see one plus one job vacancy. And at the same time, we see one more person unemployed because this person is going to go out and look for be looking for a job. So he's out there frictionally unemployed, right? We haven't changed. Note that with the additional vacancy and worker that's unemployed, we are still at full employment. Right? We're still at full employment. We just don't have, we just can't, we don't, but watch what happens to the unemployment rate. So let's say, say a person, a worker at McDonald's quits their job so they can go find a career job. The number of job vacancies will increase by 1. And the number of unemployed increases by 1. Because that person's looking for a job. So we're still at full employment. Okay? Now let's see what happens to the unemployment rate. Okay? However, the unemployment rate is now what? Right? Is going to be equal to 11 people unemployed. The labor force is still the same, so that's 100 times 100. It's going to be equal to 11%. So what does the government do about this? Because they want to target full employment. How do they figure that out? Well, what they do is they estimate where this point is by going back through the unemployment numbers. They go backwards a couple of years and actually look at the unemployment numbers, and they estimate what that point might be where we're at full employment, and that's called the natural rate of unemployment. It's an estimate of where that full employment rate is. Okay? Okay, I'm going to finish here, and I hope that, well, actually, let me write that down. I'll rearrange it later. So the government estimates where full employment would be or is by looking at unemployment rates, actual unemployment rates in the past to estimate. Okay? This estimate is called the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, I'm going to leave it here. I've gone over the hour, so I'm going to quit. I'm going to stop.